Hi everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Justin Leopard, your online teacher with Cello Hertz, and over the next few videos, I want to take you guys through all of the pieces that are in Suzuki Book 1. So Suzuki is an incredibly popular method series in the US. It's how I started learning how to play cello, and it's used by people even when they supplement it with traditional education. So the difference between like the traditional method and the Suzuki method is that the traditional method is very, very focused on sight reading and on rudiments, just like getting a good sound, practicing scales. So while I emphasize all of that stuff, and Suzuki, even in the books, start by mentioning scales and talking about learning scales, the emphasis is much more on actually learning songs. And when you teach the Suzuki method, you generally use what's called the mother tongue approach. So for the first book, maybe even the first two books of Suzuki, you're not really using the sheet music. You're listening to the teacher play, and the teacher's showing you how to play. So definitely I recommend getting the book so you can reference it and you can start learning how to sight read, and there are some interesting exercises throughout the book. But today, and again over the next few videos, probably because there's a lot of songs in here, pieces that we want to get through, but I just wanted to be able to take you guys through all of them. We already covered Twinkle Twinkle Little Star in its own video on this channel, and that's the first one in the book, and it includes some variations which are helpful to practice. So again, get the book and follow along. So the second song in the book is something called French folk song. Yes, I called it a song. It's called French folk song, but in classical music, it's always pieces, and people get snobby about it, but it's all right. So in French folk song, and I think most of, if not all of the songs in book 1 of Suzuki, we only use the top two strings, the A and the D string. And the reason for this is to keep the focus more on what your fingerings are and on getting a good sound rather than string crossings. And also the higher up strings are also thinner, so they're a little bit easier to get a good sound on. So this is why it's structured this way. You should be able to progress through the Suzuki books one after the other. And again, that's part of their popularity. It makes a lot of sense as far as choosing repertoire. So in the French folk song, we start on D. We're in the key of D, because when you're playing with the D and A string, the key of D is going to be your home key, because that's the open D string. It's in 3/4 time. So 3/4 time is different from 4/4 time, which most pop songs are, most like rock songs are in 4. But 3 time has more of a lilting feeling. A waltz is in 3. 3 is a very sort of danceable thing. So this is a folk song, definitely going to have some sort of danceable element there. And the pattern of this piece is broken up the way that a lot of music is, where there's one phrase and then an answer phrase, and then that basically happens twice more. There's a third phrase that's sort of a B section, and then the final A phrase. So, if this were a much longer song, that's AABA. It's a very short song, it doesn't take a long time to play it, but there is that little bit of structure. These aren't random notes. The first phrase and the fourth phrase are mirrored, in some way to each other, even though they're not identical. So let me just play it for you, and I'll talk about some of the bow strokes involved, etc. Okay, so I'm using, again, also the fingerings and the bowings that are in the book. If I were performing this song now, I probably would choose a fingering that avoids the open A string, which you might notice it's a little bit extra hard to control the tone of the open A string. So generally, as a rule, it's not used that much like in orchestra music and stuff like that. But it is the easiest fingering to sort of grasp conceptually at first, definitely. So I'm using that. We even end up bow. That's actually marked in here. That's what we do. The reason for that is just, again, to keep things sort of straightforward. We're not dealing with any separate bowings. The bowings are what's called as it comes. Every note gets its own bowing, and it's always going to be the reverse direction of the note before it. So within that, you still want to be able to give a hierarchy to the notes within the bar. So this is sort of an interesting way to be able to zoom in. You know what a fractal is, but something where you zoom in infinitely and it always looks the same. So that can kind of be done with music, where I've already broken up the piece into 4 phrases. Well, each of those phrases has 4 bars, and within each of those bars are 3 beats. The downbeat's going to be the most important beat, and then depending on how you're phrasing, either the second beat's the second most important, or possibly the third beat's actually the second most important. If you're doing a ba-dum bum sort of feel to it. Now that would be in contrast to if the second note were the second most important beat. That would be more like a scale. Ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum. Do you see the difference? So if you don't emphasize the downbeat, you might not even know where you are, you know, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum, is a lot less clear, but you want to give a good emphasis to the downbeat. Now, you can get really specific. You can try to be really mathematical with, you know, the first bar of the phrase being, the first beat of the first bar of the first phrase being, you know, this very stable thing, and maybe there's a little bit of a difference in the way that you start the second phrases. But the core of the interesting thing about the musicality in this, because it's simple notes, simple chord progression, you know, the implied chords here are really just 1, 4, and 5. We're basically in the B section, like pretty much all classical music does, going to the 5. So that's an A major chord. And A is a 5th above D, so it's what's known as the dominant chord. The reason for that is it's basically like the most important chord in a key, except for the root or tonic chord of the key. So in D major, we have D, but we also have A. A is going to be a super important chord in the key of D major. So even though our notes in the third phrase start on E, that E is actually part of an A major chord. This is A major, and we're playing. Cool? So when we're looking at the interesting musical features of this, it really comes down to that phrase structure again, because it's simple harmonies and it's as it comes bowing, and it's really not that, you know, complicated beyond that. Now, there's actually a note at the top of this. It says to develop the practice of tonalization. So this book explicitly wants us to get from this piece having a good tone. And so this is really just a nice segue from practicing scales. And the nice thing about French folk song is it starts at the top. So if you were practicing a 1 octave major scale, a bit of bow hair there, then you know that sometimes it's easy to neglect coming from the top. But here's a song where it starts at the top. So it's D. And when you play that, you want to have the lilting feeling and you want to have a sense of a question. Because the first phrase in music, when there's 2 phrases, is often going to be phrased like a question. That way there's like a question, answer. The B section is like, oh, it went to a different place. And then the A section is what brings it back home, what makes it feel like the piece was completed. So each of these phrases tells a story. And the first story is, what's going on? So. Okay, and one thing that you'll want to work on as you play these notes is trying to get a really fluid bow stroke. So this is why on the channel already, I've emphasized really trying to get a good sound and to work on scales and to work on bowing back and forth, because if you're not to that point, it's going to be harder to come to this piece and do it. And also, when you're first playing this, it's okay to play it under tempo as well. The marking is moderato. It doesn't have a metronome marking. It's just saying to play moderately. But to me, if you want this to be a folk song and it's in 3, you want to feel up just enough that you have that excited lilting feeling of the 3. And that's what you can get with the bow. So you don't have to go exactly back and forth. Then you'll get something like that. You want to find a way to, because you can actually rock the bow a little bit with before you hit another string. And that's really going to help you be able to like push and pull the string. Pushing his up bow and pulling his down bow in this. in a way that's going to sound really nice. And so this is what the piece is saying we should be getting from this. So this is the answer. This is the different place. Again. And then a kind of triumph. I'm terrible at speaking and playing at the same time. Kind of a triumphant return to the final phrase. And one game I like to play when I'm looking at music is asking, like, what if it were different? So this fourth phrase is basically just a scale. And the first phrase is a repeated note. So why does that happen the first time and not the second time? Well, the simple answer is basically that in the first phrase, we want to end on A. Because remember I said A is that dominant chord. It's that, question chord. That's what makes it feel like a question in the first place. So we don't need as many notes. If we were to play a scale in the first phrase, we'd have to be coming back up. Which still sounds like a question, but it also just doesn't sound like this song anymore. It just sounds like a scale. So it gives it a little bit of character. We hold it in place and we come down to this A. So get quieter here. And then get a little louder. Full. All right. So that's that one. And practice these one at a time, but we're going to keep going for now so that these aren't a lot of videos. Let's do the next one, number 3, Lightly Row. So Lightly Row is in the same pattern. It's 16 bars, it's 4 phrases. So a lot of this phrasal stuff is going to be consistent, so we don't have to re-go over it. Now this song is written in cut time. What that means is that it kind of looks like it's in common time, or 4/4. That's what the little C means. But the line through it means it's in cut time, or half time. Basically what that means is that you're going to feel it in 2 instead of 4, even though it's kind of printed the same way as common time. It's not in 2/4. It's in 4/4, but in half time, 2/2, if you will. So what that means is that, with these notes, we don't want to feel them ba 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 ba. At least, even if we play it at that tempo, we want to feel it ba bum ba bum bum ba. That second quarter note is much lighter than the first one. And we know this because, it's not one of the beats. If it were in 4/4, it'd be a beat, but it's actually an offbeat in here. So kind of the same thing is true of the beat hierarchy when we're talking about 2/4, or 2/2 as we're talking about 3/4. In the previous one, we talked about a beat hierarchy. Downbeat's the most important one, and beat 2 of cut time, which is the half note in this, that's going to be a little bit lighter. Okay, so here's what it sounds like. Hold that last note out a little longer if you want to. So this is a very similar piece. What's different about it is that we're starting on A instead of D. So we have those first notes, we have that string crossing in there, and you can practice that slow. But otherwise, we're still thinking about that tonalization, getting a really great sound. We're thinking about playing this form, this 16-bar sort of form to the music, thinking about asking different questions with the phrasing. And it helps, it's easy to just play through your rep a couple of times and call it good. But if you're going to do that, and I recommend you break the piece apart a little further than that, but if you're going to do that, make sure you're varying it and doing a lot of different tries. If you are just trying to do the same thing every time, what that's going to do by just playing it a few times is you're not going to fix the mistakes you keep making every time, because you're going to not realize what those are. And also, you're going to start to lose perspective on what the piece is even supposed to mean, because you just kind of get used to hearing it in this increasingly mutated version. That is, if you're trying to play it the same way every time, because it is going to change a little bit. So it's good to practice a lot of different variations. Try reversing the bow, try practicing different fingerings, try, playing with the rhythm, not doing exactly the printed rhythm. All of these things are actually what makes practicing sort of work for you and allows you to learn the instrument beyond just these specific notes as well. Okay, so let's keep moving on. So songs 4 and 5 are also very similarly structured to each other, and that structure is basically a 12-bar structure. So it's similar to a blues in that the way that these phrases are going to work is that we're going to have kind of 2 statements, and then we're going to have like this final phrase. It's almost as though I said something once, I said something twice, don't make me say it again. I don't know. That's my metaphor for the structure in short terms of these two. So song number 4 is called Song of the Wind. It's credited also to being a folk song. It's in D major. Okay, but we have a little bit of faster notes, and that's what makes this one new compared to the ones we've done so far. We're still thinking about tonalization. We're still thinking about good tone. We're still thinking about what we're doing with string crossings and everything, but we're playing just a little bit faster. We're still at a moderato tempo, but we have 8th notes. And here, just to show you the difference between, cut time and 2/4, in 2/4, there's only 4 8th notes. But back in cut time, there were 8. Okay, so there is a difference. But we're still going to feel this in some ways. Similarly, we're going to feel it in 2. Bum, 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 bum. But you really could almost feel it in a very slow 4, where each phrase is a bar. Anyway, that is neither here nor there for now. Let me show you what it sounds like. Cool. And there is a repeat sign in it. I see that there. Not all of them have the repeats, but this one does. So you can hear that with these phrases, there are a little bit of echoes. So we have echo. Play a little softer. And here's an echo. So this one, actually, I tweak what I said a little bit. The phrase structure of this is a little bit more like make a statement, question it just a little bit, have an alternative, feel like that alternative was better. That's kind of the structure of this. We have a phrase, we have a little echo, and then we have kind of a question and answer phrase that closes out the form. One of the things to notice about this one, and it makes a point to say, keep your first finger down. So it's just unnecessary. So it makes a point to start practicing that. And in general, if I haven't mentioned in other videos, make sure that when you have your third finger down, don't do this. Any time you have a finger down, you'll have all the previous fingers down as well. This is going to give support to the hand and help you with fatigue and help you with a better sound and all sorts of stuff. So even when you're using vibrato, keep all the fingers down. So this is sometimes a mistake people make. Okay, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up with one more. We're going to do number 5 here. We're back in our favorite meter. We're in 4/4 time or common time. So you're going to see that little C, that means common time. And we're starting on the 3rd scale degree. So this book, again, this is pretty much the metric that people teach cello in the US these days. These songs are structured really, really, really well. We've started on every chord degree. We've played in different keys, different meters. And yet it is all in the same key and all on these 2 strings. So really fantastic way to just inch your way forward in progress. I don't know if there's much else to say about this one other than that it just continues to combine all the things we've talked about so far. So let me play it for you. Wonderful. So with this one again, maybe if you can start challenging yourself, eventually come up with a different fingering than that open A string. This one's also kind of fun because in theory there are words to it. I don't know what the words would be for the whole thing, but in the first bar, this one is called Go Tell Aunt Rhody, and the melody is Go Tell Aunt Rhody. So you can kind of come up with your own lyrics for this. It's a helpful sort of technique, especially these days. I've been really thinking about music as a way of speaking and music as a different language that you can speak well. So you want to think about all the things that make speech work and then make them work for your music. And that can include coming up with fun lyrics. Go tell Aunt Rhody I had chicken feet. I don't know. Just, you can be silly with it, but it'll kind of help you play it. Well, we'll just do it one more time. We'll be conscientious of that. And in that middle phrase there again, when you play the repetition, do it a little bit quieter and just really try to have that sense of completion when you get to the end of the song. Just practice it until, you're just kind of having some fun with it, feeling comfortable enough with it. I think that sometimes the double challenge of getting started with music is that the music that you want to play starts off a little bit outside of your reach. But the music that you want to play, the song, your favorite songs and all that, those are probably the things that you know musically most how to play. So even to this day, I feel like going back to some of these really simple songs, and I play them and it's like, is that it? I don't know. Maybe there's like truly just incredible renditions of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star in the world. But I think that one of those challenges is that maybe it's hard to connect to these pieces, but I would just say it's okay. Use them for what they can teach you about the instrument itself. And for me especially, like the phrasing thing, that was something that was hard to get early on, but I think if I'd been able to get a better handle on the relationship between phrasing and music early on, I would have had an easier time just as I was learning cello. I felt like I learned things out of order, and then eventually phrasing made sense. So that's why I tried to emphasize it for you guys in today's video. Anyway, in the next video, we're going to keep going through some of these Suzuki songs. Hope you guys keep following along. And remember, don't take it too fast. The reason I can go through a few in an episode is because they are very related to each other, and they're simple songs. They don't take that much time to get through. But take your time with it. There's no rush through any of this. Once again, my name is Justin Leppard, and you've been watching Higher Hertz. Subscribe and let us know in the comments how your cello journey is going, and make sure to stay tuned for the next episode to keep learning. All right, that's it for now, folks. Have a good one.